If you are looking into buying cheap and safe FIFA coins, look no further than footcoinshop.net. They have the fastest service, an incredible loyalty reward system, and the best prices around. Use my creator code Inception when you sign up for your account and get a 5% discount with your order. Hey guys, what's going on? Inception here, and welcome to another video. Guys, today we're going to be doing a defending tutorial, okay? So in this defending tutorial, guys, I just want to mention that it's very important to say that defending in this year's game, it is hard, okay? I'm not going to say that it isn't, because it is very, very difficult. So don't be discouraged if you're conceding opportunities, if you're not defending properly, because it is a difficult thing to do in this game. However, there are certain scenarios that you should be following when it comes down to which animation choices you do when defending, okay? So the first thing to mention, right, is obviously the new defensive mechanic that allows you to choose a shoulder barge or a standing tackle, okay? You don't necessarily have to use this setting, because there's some people that still use tactical in the top divisions and they still do a great job. What's the most important thing is understanding patterns of play and what mechanic you should use when the situation presents itself, okay? So what you're gonna do is you're gonna go to game settings. You're going to go all the way down here into defending, okay? So defending gives you the option for advanced and tactical. Advanced is the thing that I taught you guys in the video where I showed you the OP mechanic that you should learn, which is basically allowing you to select whether you do a shoulder barge or whether you do a standing tackle, okay? Because being able to selectively choose the shoulder barge is a very effective thing, especially when you have certain playstyles, which we're going to mention right now. So the defensive playstyles is all of this stuff right here, guys. So there's block, bruiser, intercept, jockey, slide tackle, anticipate, which are all going to be very, very important playstyles to take a look at. And you should always look into this when looking into evolving certain evolution players, because playstyle is going to be a very huge part in regards to whether or not a defensive player will be good or bad, okay? So the big ones right now, the shoulder barge especially, is going to be in the bruiser playstyle as well as the anticipate playstyle. Both of those together is crazy, okay? Because the bruiser is even greater strength when performing physical tackles, which is the shoulder barge, right? And then anticipate is how you do possession-based tackles, right? So a significantly improved chances of standing tackle success and grants the ability to stop the ball directly at their feet when performing a standing tackle. When your players don't have these things, they're going to have moments where they're going to be stupid, okay? So it's going to be very important to mention this. There's intercepts, there's block. Block is obviously very good as well, but those two are the main ones when it comes to the shoulder barge animation, okay? Okay, so when do you use the shoulder barge animation? Now guys, again, very important to mention that when players have the playstyle, the defensive stats, and the physical, you have more angles to work with when you want to use it. But if you don't have the angles, or your players don't have the playstyles, you have to be more mindful of the angles that you're approaching the ball at, right? So let's say here in this example with Neymar, we're approaching to the bottom right. I have to change my camera for you guys. The bottom right? Okay. In this situation, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold our trigger, left stick to the bottom right, and I'm going to press X. Just tap, don't hold it. Press X, and he's going to shoulder barge into Neymar. So the way that it's going to work is like this. Shoulder barge. And I get the ball. Now, I want you guys to see something here with the scenario. If I do the shoulder barge too early, and I don't have the physical, I don't have the defensive stats, I don't have the play styles, it's less consistent to work. Now we're going to try an example to see if I can get one here, right? But this is going to be one right here, where I do it a little bit too early. Boom. Neymar doesn't get shrugged off because you did it too early. Now, doing it too early is not necessarily that big of a deal, because what happens is that your player becomes more aggressive towards pushing towards the ball anyways and putting pressure against the attacker. So there's that whole composure situation in FIFA where it can make your player take a worse shot. So it's not always horrible to do that, especially if you kind of need to do a last ditch tackle, right? So it's not necessarily a huge deal, but you can see that the timing of getting it from behind the player or in front and then cutting in is going to be a really big difference to work with, okay? Okay, guys, so this is going to be another scenario here where you're kind of like at the top, right? And the attacker is kind of facing forward and you're behind the guy, right? Okay, so let's get started with this one. Again, this is going to be an example of showing you how putting pressure against the opposition is not necessarily a horrible thing, but it's always going to be situational in game because you can't let them get too close to the net, okay? So over here, what we're going to do is we're going to get behind Neymar, shoulder barge, right? And you can see that I aggressively push towards him and I get the ball. I do it one time and I continue running. I didn't do a tackle afterwards and he got the ball for me, right? Again, situation here, shoulder barge, right? I don't get possession of the ball because my player is not a defensive player. And I don't get it, see? You have to be very, very mindful of this. If you're using attackers, you're using these types of players, they're not always going to get the ball. Because if you're behind and you do a shoulder barge, right, you'll put pressure, but Neymar will still have the ball, especially if you don't have the right things, okay? So those are the types of areas that you want to use shoulder barge. It's when you're going up against the attacker at an angle, right? And you want to face him in a way where you're going to get the ball ahead of him. Okay, so let me show you guys the example of what happens when you have the Playstyle Plus version, okay? So I'm using Palinga right now, who has the Playstyle Plus version of this playstyle, right? So I want you guys to notice something. When I'm approaching the guy, right, I can't shoulder barge too early, even if I have this crazy advantage ahead of him. Because if I do that, my player might overcommit and just miss the ball entirely, because they will sometimes do that. So you'll see what happens here. Because the guy's using Martinelli and he's a significantly faster player, you have to wait at an angle where Martinelli is facing that sort of direction. But when Palinga is going into Martinelli, he also kind of has to face that direction as well. Okay, so you'll see what I do here. Boom, I'm already facing that direction. This angle right here, when you have the Playstyle Plus, is crazy because of the way that they aggressively push into the guy. So watch the controller and watch the animation that I do. Watch, pressing X, ready? X tap, the bruiser playstyle is being activated, and I get possession of the ball, right? So just to show you guys the exact same thing without me doing anything, just a whole situation. Bruiser playstyle. Easier to get the ball in that situation. Now I want to show you guys a different scenario here. So watch what happens when I'm using a card like Pep, and I'm not using the shoulder barge, or I'm not doing the tackle animation, okay? You can see with my button, I don't press either of them, because defending in this game, there is also another way of defending where you just run into the ball to receive possession of it. But you have to be very careful of when you use this, because a guy can get a pass off, a shot off against you, and you have no idea that happens. Like I said, I'm not perfect, but I could see these things, right? So he gets his pass off here. Guys, this situation is perfect for me to shoulder barge him, because I have the angle in front of him, and Pep has the bruiser playstyle, and he has anticipate. Not the plus versions of it, but the versions would be good enough to really throw off Correa. But you can see that I don't press the circle, I don't press the X, because I'm defending just with the jockey system to get the ball, and look at what happens. He gets the shot off, right? I do this because I expect my player to maybe get a tackle animation against the opposition, which he tries to do, but Pep is not Varane, he's not Saliba, right? So he's not going to be the craziest at doing that. So again, you have to be very mindful of the types of players that you use for these animations to pop off, okay? This angle right here is going to be one of the key angles to utilize, okay? So make sure that you get full meta players, shadow chemistry style with good physical attributes, all this kind of stuff, because people right now, what they're doing is they're only playing one play style because they're NPCs. They're playing one play style. All they're doing is running to the side and doing a driven pass on the inside. So this scenario right here is going to be a very good example of what you need to be doing to block out the situation as much as possible. Now, again, I'm not perfect at it, right? But it's what you need to do in this area. So you get into this situation, this is a perfect example of when you should use the shoulder barge, right? To really push into the guy to avoid the pass that the guy does, okay? Now, there is also another way for your player, not necessarily to shoulder barge, but to be aggressive against the attacker while doing a tackle animation, okay? And that's when you are tackling against your opposition, when you are in close proximity to them, that feels like a shoulder barge situation, okay? So let me show you guys an example. You get here, you're running, and then you tackle, and you get possession of the ball, right? I want to show you guys different situations because it doesn't always work that way, right? That's a good one. So right there, I do the tackle, Neymar's ahead of me, I can't get possession of the ball. Another situation here. Boom, tackle, possession based on the inside. You see how he's kind of aggressive towards pushing into Neymar, but then doing the tackle at the same time? That's another way that you can get possession of the ball. But that one, you have to be very careful of because, listen, you can concede some penalties against people with that, right? But it is something that I do when I feel like I'm comfortable enough to get possession of the ball, because a shoulder barge will push the player off, but sometimes the animations aren't always consistent, so you won't receive possession of the ball, right? Again, based off of the players that you have, the play styles, defensive stats, all that kind of stuff. So that's going to be a really key area to use these defensive animations because people are always doing this play style because they're NPCs. So this is the playstyle that I'm talking about. All right, now we're gonna run into the side position. We're gonna run here, boom, 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 and then do a shot. You're gonna come across this all the time, okay? Okay, guys, so because of this playstyle, right, you're gonna come across people who are going to park the bus, which is why EA have eliminated 3-back and 5-back formations from competitive events, because there's a huge park the bus problem right now. You're going to come across people that are going to park the bus like crazy because this playstyle is so effective, and you will come across people that only play this playstyle. They don't play anything else, okay? So, 2 different ways to defend this. The main ones, because we're obviously going to be talking about some of the other mechanics that you should use when defending, right? But the main things that you should be using is, 1, a tactic that is very defensive to avoid this as much as possible. So, people are using 5-backs. People are using park the bus, like super park the bus tactics to avoid this type of goal. They don't want to concede this, so they will do this. The tactics part is a really huge part. So if you guys play a 4-2-3-1, you play a 4-3-2-1, and you have the right tactics where you're lined up in a 4-4-2 defend and a 4-3-2-1, or you're playing a 4-2-3-1 where you have your CDMs on stay back while attacking with your fullbacks on stay back while attacking to avoid it as much as possible, that's going to be a thing too. But the other thing, right, is going to be this. So if you're defending this scenario right here, right, we're going to select sides and we're going to go to the defensive side here, right? If you are defending this scenario right here, you can just do the basic stuff, which is the mechanics I'll teach you guys after this scenario, okay? You can do the basic stuff where it's like, let's just resume it. You're just R trigger, you're holding LTRT, right, to block out those situations, right? The cutback part of that attacking playstyle is going to be the most important thing to look at. But you also have to be mindful of if they don't cut back and they get close to your goalkeeper, okay? So what I usually do in this situation is I feel it out, right? Maybe there's a situation where I want to use either one feature or I don't use it at all if my players are positioned properly, okay? If it's open, I use it. This mechanic is the double tap R1, this one, right? Watch what happens if his players get into certain scenarios and I double tap R1 if his attacker gets into the area, right? So I'm defending, double tap R1. Look at what happens. Your players will start to block the players that are open or making runs. You have to really feel out that mechanic when you're defending, because sometimes you'll press it and they're blocking the wrong players. So you have to stop doing it and then do it again, right? So let me show you the scenario. I'm gonna go here, double tap R1. I don't like the way he's blocking. Okay, double tap R1 again. That's what I do to avoid that extra pass in that angle as much as possible. It's not perfect, but it's a very effective way to try to block out that situation as much as possible, okay? This is a scenario here where I concede this opportunity, right? But sometimes the types of players that you have in the defense could save you, or if you time it correctly, okay? So this guy, he's attacking against me. He goes into the side position, right? So I'm using my fullback in this area and I switch to my center back because I'm always looking at that cutback, right? This little cutback right here is a really huge thing. But if people see this space, they will run into it. So I have to watch the cutback, but I also have to watch the run. So this guy runs, and you can see that I actually use the double tap R1 for a little bit, but then I let go of it because I'm thinking like, hey, maybe he's going to pass it here, maybe he's going to pass it here. And you'll see that I activated again, but at this point it's too late because I know that he wants to do the driven pass on the inside for the shot right afterwards. I know that he wants to do it, but I'm just timing these incorrectly. Like I said, I'm not perfect at the defensive situations, but this is what you should do to block out these areas. So I do it, he gets the pass off. Now here's the thing, he takes a shot that he doesn't know he's gonna score, okay? He really doesn't. He takes a shot and it's like, maybe it goes in, maybe it doesn't. I'm using Pep in this situation. What happens if I have the playstyle plus or the playstyle thing where I have block, right? If I have block, Pep can save this opportunity because he is in the trajectory of the shot to block this situation. You could see that I'm clearly using the R1 to activate him as well, to put the pressure against the opposition. So she takes a shot, Pep does an animation, but it's more like a I'm flying away animation, and he doesn't block the opportunity, and they score, right? So I'm just showing you an example of how it's still effective to use, but the timing is very important, okay? So the R1, guys, is not only effective against that one playstyle, it's also very effective when people are making a run in general. If they're behind you and you notice that your defender is not tracking against him, what you do is you're in a situation like this, and you double tap R1, and you can see that your players will start to mark the players that are starting to make those runs, right? So you can see that one guy is obviously open because I don't have the extra guy to block that area. So if I go back into scenarios here, and I add, one more player here from the defensive positions, and I start the scenario again, R1, you see how he starts to block that guy in the bottom? So again, R1, but you always activate it, right? Because you can see that it's not activating him specifically. So you let go of it if it's not activating the players you want it to. So in this situation here, he's gonna run, I'm gonna do this, and it activates him. So always look at that little blue-green cursor on top of the head if it's marking the players that you want. If it's not, let go of it and go back into it, right? So R1, it's blocking the player that I want, no problem. If I R1 again, it's not blocking the player. So I have to let go and R1 again to block that area. So that's a very, very important mechanic to learn as well, to kind of block out all of the opposition's attacking options as much as possible. But like I said, you have to time it correctly, because sometimes you do it and it just creates like the biggest of gaps possible, right? So make sure that you use it, let go of it, use it, let go of it, given the situation, right? So if you're noticing it's opening up too much, you gotta let go of it. So very important to learn as well. The next key animation that you guys have to learn is when to utilize your jockey system. So your jockey, guys, is when you just press L2 or L trigger, okay? In this game, you're gonna wanna utilize your L trigger and your R trigger a lot of the times, because if someone is really good at using the controlled sprint against you, and they have someone like Neymar, and they're just doing this, let me show you guys the example, okay? You're just holding R1, look at how fast he can dribble with the ball at his feet. Look at this. You guys saw the Ronaldinho review, right? When I had R1 on, when I was using R1 on Ronaldinho, he was nuts. So you'll notice that if I'm defending in that situation and I'm only holding the jockey system, he's gonna get past me very, very easily, right? But if I am blocking those sort of runs and I'm holding LTRT to block the general area and then go for a shoulder barge if the opportunity presents itself, that's what's gonna be the most ideal thing to do, right? So let's select sides again. LTRT is like this, right? So you're gonna notice LTRT will still defend for you, but you'll be able to jockey quickly, right? LTRT, just L trigger. If you hold just L trigger, your player is slower to defend on the jockey unless they have the specific playstyle. Very important thing to mention is the playstyle, right? So trigger. Don't overcommit, guys. Only block the general area, because the attackers are crazy on those quick little dribbles, right? So you just have to block the general area to avoid a shot or a pass as much as possible. Don't always overcommit. Overcommitment is going to be very situational, right? Because what you want to do is you just want to block those areas. But you see how Neymar is starting to approach the goalie area? That's where you have to be very mindful because of this, right? Okay, guys, so let me show you guys an example of an attacking play that I was able to pull off because the guy did not defend the situation well enough to block every single scenario, okay? So this situation is me utilizing the side position. Rafinha makes this space right here. Shooting at this angle, you definitely can do, right? This will be in attacking tutorials in the future, but obviously the angle is not good enough. Like, you have to have precision shooting for this specific shot to work. But obviously I'm very mindful of the defender or the goalkeeper saving this opportunity. So what I do here is I keep going in, and you notice that he goes for the track back because he's looking for the extra pass meta, like I was mentioning earlier for this defensive review. But here's the thing that happens, guys. He jockeys all the way back, and his players are blocking the extra pass. But guess what happens, man? If you're up against someone that knows how to score in this game, he's going to shot cancel your goalkeeper, and then he'll have an empty net to work with. Because the guy is so focused on using the jockey system that you'll notice that he's not even going into me to block out the opportunity while looking at the shot cancel. So in this scenario, if the guy gets into this position right here, guys, you have to utilize the double tap R1, but you have to put a guy close to him as well, because if he knows what he's doing, he's just going to shot cancel your goalie, which, by the way, I like that they added this into the game because it adds a variable to defending, especially if people are being blocked everywhere, right? So you're here. I have this situation here where I shot cancel. So I shoot the ball, L trigger, R trigger right away, forces an animation out of the goalkeeper. He's not defending this general area here, and you score the opportunity. So you have to be very, very careful when people get into this scenario right here in general, because they'll either go for the pass or they'll go for the block out. So you have to use R1 And you have to use your jockey system to block out that situation as much as possible, because that is going to be the way that people are going to attack you the most, okay? This is also another very important mechanic to learn when it comes to defending, okay? Go to your settings, and this will be completely preference based, whether you want to do it or not. I recommend directional, okay? Because you can point in the direction that you want to do this. But you can see that the clearance assistance here is set to directional, okay? Guys, there's a mechanic that you guys need to learn, and it's this, okay? This mechanic is when you hold your clearance button, okay? If you hold your clearance button in a direction that you are aiming, your player will be more physical and will jump higher to win possession of the ball. I use this on every single 1v1 that I know I'm probably not going to win, or maybe I could or couldn't, but I just want more of a physical engagement, okay? So this is just an example from a guy doing a goal kick against me, right? So he does the goal kick, I have Konate, and look at the buttons that I'm pressing at the top right, okay? I'm holding the circle button all the way until my bar is full, but I'm still aiming to the left side because I have the directional setting set up on my controller so that he will do the clearance in that direction. When you are doing a clearance in the direction, you really have to feel it out, okay? Because in a situation like this, I didn't necessarily have to clear it to my João Felix because I'm ahead of the attacker here. So if I wanted to hold the clearance to go upwards, he would go upwards. But even here, I could have gone for a pass. But again, everything that happens in the moment is in the moment. Nobody is perfect, right? But this is a situation here where I hold the clearance button and I will win that physical engagement over that hurricane, right? And the thing is that in a situation like this where I see that I'm using João Felix, don't think I'm gonna go for a pass here. No. I'm doing the exact same thing. I'm holding my clearance button because look at how much higher my João Felix is jumping because the guy who's defending here is pressing the pass button. Now, look at what happens when I try to do a random variable like, oh, let's see who gets his ball. It's a collision between both players, and now I receive possession of the ball. Would I have received possession of the ball if I went for a pass in this situation? Probably not. Guys, when people are going for corner kicks or crosses against you and it's not obvious that you're going to win the ball, you go for the clearance every single time. But the direction that you face, right, with your controller to the bottom left, to the top left, to the top right, is all going to depend on where your opponent is positioned against you, because it doesn't always make sense to clear it out of position directly to the side, because if the opponent is facing you a certain way where they are blocking that area, it makes more sense for you to clear it more at an angle. So let's say I was going to go for the left side, but my opponent is right on me to the left side. It's going to make more sense for me to go bottom left or top left. You understand? So it's going to be very important for people to understand this when they're going for the clearance situation in general, okay? It's very, very important because you will win more physical engagements in the air if you use your clearance button more often. Okay guys, so for the last mechanic, it's going to be the second man press. Second man press, going to be back in this game as well because your players don't overcommit in certain situations like you would if you were to manually use the defender, okay? So what we're going to do here is we're just going to resume this scenario and we're going to do this. Switch off of the player and just press R and just hold R1 to block the general vicinity, right? Switch off, hold R1. And you can see that you have the green cursor on top of your player's head. Now be very mindful of that green cursor. You can see that at some point it turns red, right? If you're holding it the entire time, at some point it will turn red. If it turns red, they will not do as good of a job second man pressing, okay? So if you're doing that, you gotta make sure that you're no longer holding the R1 because they're not gonna do that crazy of a job so that it kind of switches to somebody else. Now, with the R1, guys, you're going to time it. You're going to either turn it on or turn it off based off of who is second man pressing. Sometimes you'll hold R1 and the guy that's, being the second man press isn't the guy that you want. So you'll do it. Oh, that's not who I want. Let me switch. Boom. Second man press is somebody else, right? That's going to be a really huge way of defending in this game, to block out passes, to block out shots, and to defend in general, because the AI will do a better job transitioning left and right in a lot of situations more than you will, right? But remember, if you switch off of the player, you always have the cursor on top of your head to see who the second man press is going to go on, okay? So this is going going to be a very huge mechanic to learn as well. A lot of people are going to be defending in this way. You'll notice that cursor thing against them. But again, when you're using that second man press, if you do certain skill moves, they will overcommit. Let me show you guys an example, okay? So it's hard to show in this because I don't know if the player is actually activating second man press. But let's say I'm using Neymar and I'm attacking, right? I could do a skill move. I could do a skill move like this, right? And you can see that his defensive AI is overcommitting into the side position because of the new skill move. So he's overcommitting. I do the skill move. He overcommits. So you have to be very careful. If you're only using defensive AI, people will do skill moves against you to get past you because you're not manually using that guy. So you have to be very selective of when you're defending with these people. So this is like the real last mechanics because these are the basic ones, right? That you're obviously going to learn when you're playing against people, right? So it's going to be just the regular tackle and it's going to be the slide tackle as well, right? So the regular tackle, if you're up against somebody, right? Neymar makes that little play right there. I do a tackle situation. Now, to be honest with you guys, I don't always use tackle. Like I'll use tackle if my player has the anticipate playstyle. Like when I'm using Varane and I use the tackle button, it's nice because he makes a more possession-based challenge, which to be fair, I hate that it's a playstyle, but like it should have just been a basic thing like they do in eFootball. The possession-based tackles there are amazing. But this is just one of the ways that you would defend, right? You want to do this more when you have like anticipated stuff so you can get full possession of the ball, right? So Pep is a really good example of someone that can get possession of the ball because he has the actual playstyle for it, right? And then obviously the other one is going to be the slide challenge or the slide tackle, right? Where you're basically at an angle like this, very similar to the shoulder barge situation. You get possession of the ball, basically approaching at a 45-degree angle, but you have to be a little bit further into the player to really time it, right? So obviously if I'm here, further in, now I can time it against him, right? If you do it a little bit too far behind, you will either tackle the person or you will tackle him completely mistimed. Because if you overcommit and you do a slide challenge, guys, but he gets that quick dribble around you, for instance, if I'm the attacker in this situation here, I'm Neymar and I decide to do this, you've just overcommitted a slide tackle and I have space to work with, right? Go for a finesse shot, whatever it is that I go for afterwards. So yeah, standing tackle, sliding tackle. I do use sliding tackle sometimes. Honestly, regular tackle I also use sometimes as well, but it's mostly just jockey and letting my player do the animation himself because it seems to be more consistent when I do that. So again, when I say that I let the player do it himself, it's kind of like this, right? So let's say we're here and I'm just, just doing this. I'm just easing my way into the ball, right? Again, going into it, easing my way into the ball. I'm holding just the jockey system there because I'm already on the ball, so he'll just do the animation himself. Right, easing into it, again, ease into it. I don't always press the tackle button or the slide tackle because if you're inside the 18-yard box, sometimes you'll concede a foul, which you don't obviously want to do, but easing yourself into the area of the ball will force an animation out of your defender to get the ball anyways, right? So you obviously have to time those as much as possible too. So guys, this was more of a tutorial for the individual mechanics that you need to learn when defending in this game for certain scenarios. I haven't talked about all the scenarios that people try to utilize when attacking in this game, especially in the higher tier divisions. We can make that for a separate video if you guys want, but for now, we'll leave the video there. Hopefully you guys enjoy. I'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace out, dudes. Love you guys.